Hi guys, so welcome back to another video. So this video is about 5 books that made the biggest change in my life. Are there more books? Of course there are. I could give about 45 books and that's going to be a pretty damn long podcast. So I've actually kind of handpicked 5 books so you can think differently and obviously buy them and read it. Books, of course, makes you a huge impact. Since I'm talking about books, let me just add a few things about regarding reading books. I see a lot of videos, they talk about how to read a book a day, book a week, book in few hours. It's all absolute rubbish. Don't watch it and don't even listen to them. It's not about, we are not in a competition. Do you get an award if you read a certain number of books? Or do you read books to change your character, learn something, and most importantly, remember that for the rest of your life and use it to enhance your life? For that, you got to read it slowly. That's what it is. And depending on your capabilities, you might read a little faster or slower. It doesn't matter. You're not in competition. So take your time, understand why am I reading this book? Why did I pick up this book and what I'm going to do with it? So that brings me to the book number 1. Incredible book. This is called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. This is one of the mainstream books that actually worthy of being there. Millions of copies have been sold across the world and this book add massive value to my life. Let me just share some of the highlights that I have found in this book. This one is amazing. It says, accept, then act. Whatever the present moment contains, accept that as if you had chosen it. Always work with it, not against it. Make that present moment your friend, your ally, not your enemy. This will miraculously transform your whole life. And absolutely it is. But the moment that I learned this, I thought it's so liberating to even read it. It's incredible. Because we have this whole tendency to run away from the present. We think about either the future or the past, right? It's actually the life is happening right now in the present moment, and certain situations that we don't want to be in here. You want to come out of this situation, but embrace it, and that alone give you such empowerment to come out of that problem much faster rather than pondering on future or the past. The second one I will share here is talking about spirituality. When you develop your life, if you are pursuing a spiritual life, let's say whatever the religion, spiritual practices you have, certain scriptures or certain rituals, certain ways that people practice their religion or the spirituality, it may not be best for you. It probably doesn't work for you. Probably those words don't work for you. You feel even more disempowered as you hear this enlightening word apparently. If it doesn't work for you, don't use it. Simple. You don't have to wrestle with it. And that's what he advises here. I thought it was brilliant. The light is too painful for someone who wants to remain in the darkness. I thought it was golden. Not everybody is ready to learn it. This is something I use in my coaching as well. As a part of it, I always ask, are you coachable? Do you want to be coached? This is one of the things that I ask. Even in the massive corporate coaching session where about 40, 50, 60 people in the room, I still ask, when someone asks a question, and I still ask, do you want to resolve that problem? Because I have to get that consent. It's because sometimes you think it's the right thing, but this person is not believing it, and you have this entire problem that you're creating. Because life sometimes is too painful for someone who's not actually ready to be transformed. And here's another one. Full attention, or the fullest attention. The actual meaning of the fullest attention is the fullest acceptance. That's incredible. If you don't have the fullest acceptance of this present moment, you don't have the fullest attention. Absolutely, right? It's such a liberating, amazing line. Look, I highly respect this author. I have a lot of honor and respect for this author. I'm really grateful for a lot of the things that I've learned from this author. And I watch his YouTube channel as well. But here, there's a paragraph I said, disagree, and I put a cross. Here's the thing that I have to tell you, that once you started reading or watching someone, reading someone's book, etc. When you started liking that person, inevitable that you're going to get biased toward that person. I want you to be unbiased, not often easy, but be open. If you don't like it, if you disagree, just accept the fact that you disagree with it. Maybe you're wrong, he's right, but don't follow anybody blindly just because that someone is saying it. So many years later, probably you find out, oh, well, the thing that I disagree with was actually 100% I agree, or you were right, he was wrong. That was actually a wrong passage to include. So I want you to read it intelligently. And now the other thing that I learned from this book, which greatly helped me to develop my spiritual life, that he says, a lot of people who practice spirituality, especially I think it's very true for Sri Lanka and the subcontinent, that we've been taught about some spiritual, let's say nirvana, enlightenment, or spiritual enhancement, some sort of a thing that you have to suffer, that you have to leave all the things that you love, right? So in this whole exchange of communication, the example he gives here is, imagine there's a pot of honey and then you replace that with a pot of some really bitter drink. In Sri Lanka, there's an Ayurvedic drink called kasai. Let's say it's full of kasai. It's bitter as hell. Now you put label and say this is pure honey. And you're a little kid and you hear that pure honey is incredibly tasty, so good. And you go and taste it a little bit and it's bitter as hell. And you run a mile away from that next time you see. Now it's completely wrong, isn't it? Someone misguided you, misdirected you to think this whole bitter thing as pure honey was a wrong label. So the rest of your life, you're not going to go anywhere near it. This is what has happened drastically, vastly to the entire subcontinent, that we have incredibly powerful, enlightening, spiritual Dhamma around the subcontinent. However, somehow it's been communicated as something bitter. So we keep very, very distant from that. So the core, the most powerful thing that we don't get anywhere closer, we just go beating about the bush. The moment I heard it, I changed it. I changed the label that I've given. All you've got to do is think about enlightenment or nirvana or whatever, and honestly ask yourself, what's the label that you've given? Have you given like a bitter label? Change it. Put a very tasty, really enlightening, very empowering, very energizing label to that. And suddenly, you see you're drawn into that pretty well. Incredible. Thankful for this author for revealing that. That's the book number 1. The second book might not be for everyone, but definitely for me. This is the autobiography of Bruce Lee, legendary martial artist and actor. This book is about 24 years old. I landed in London. I went to one of my uncle's house. I stayed there for a few weeks. He had an attic full of books. It was cold, damp, dark, miserable London. So I was homesick as well. So I was walking around to take my mind away to read a book. Landed on this extremely amazing treasure. So the why this is important is I expect to read how badass Bruce Lee was. I ended up reading 90% of the book, how vulnerable Bruce Lee was, how weak, how fragile, how much he suffered, how much he wrestled with his weaknesses, his mindset, all sorts of problems. I was like, wow, this is unbelievable. And here he says in one point, one of the most deep and profound things that is shared by this author, actually the name of the author is Bruce Thomas, by the way, he's a martial artist who learned martial arts from a disciple of Bruce Lee. So he explains, let me just tell you in brief, as you practice a certain skill, as you go totally immersed in that one skill, and you develop something called a third force. Now in the eastern part of the world, they give it such a supernatural identification for that, but actually really scientific and physical. There is a supernatural part of it, but I'm not going to talk about that. So the third force is that when you develop a certain skill, and here they talk about martial arts. So when you practice these punches and kicks thousands of times, so diligently, so subtle and really deep focusing on this become your personal or natural expression. Any technique, any skill, you only become great only when the moment that this becomes your natural expression, not that you're trying to recite from a book and just, shove it out on someone's face. So as you practice that, you become so present and you express your skill. And as you, in a martial art, in a kumite or combat, if you go even further, you become so present and so mindful to the point that you start sensing what the opponent is actually thinking. Is he about a punch or a kick? He's trying to kick, but actually he's actually showing that he's going to kick, but it's actually about to punch. You start reading those subtle layers. This is what he called the third force. And the author also mentioned the similar thing was found by the golfers. When we play golf, when you become so good at golfing, when you play that range shot, the top golfers apparently have started seeing the thing called the energy line. They see that line, the perfect line that they should actually send the ball. So they simply follow that line. So this is in the Eastern world. We used to talk about in a very supernatural way, but it's actually your senses become super, super sharp. That's why you might have seen in other videos that I say as well, master one skill, be a champion of one skill. Only if you go that length, you get this kind of a seemingly supernatural skill. This is one of the things that I've learned. And also, those who are old enough, remember the Kung Fu, the TV series, telecasted in our television, acted by David Carradine, I think. But actually written, entire story dialogues and everything is written by Bruce Lee. And Bruce Lee was given the promise by Hollywood that he'll be the main cast, the main actor. But at the last moment, they kick him out because he's Chinese and they want to give it to a white man. Again, that's how they played it. And Bruce Lee got really frustrated, angry, and left the United States and went back to his motherland, Hong Kong. And that's where he ended up filming this masterpiece called Enter the Dragon, which brought millions of views. And for all throughout 70s, all throughout 80s and 90s, all the way to 2000, all the young guys were so fascinated by that movie. So, but there's a huge philosophy rather than just fighting. This book is incredible. And also something that I've learned was how he learned how to drop his limitations and his cultural disbeliefs. He started lifting weights like the West. He started learning wrestling, where the Western world is big about that. Adopting nutrition and all sorts of things. As a result, he became who he was. So, yeah. That made an incredible impact on me, and this book is actually rarely found. I don't know if it's available on Amazon, but if you can get hold of a copy, it's incredible. The next book is guaranteed for sure. It's very less read. It's called The Honorable Company, written by John Key. Honorable Company is the story of the East India Company, who actually came across to this part of the world and started conquering this part of the world. And it was actually a company who established here first. In the entire kinghood, the queen politics came later on. It was a business who actually started controlling, and the entire story, how it started and how much they failed, how many times they failed, how much they struggled, everything was revealed in this book. I've read so many articles back in London, but man, this book is so extensive detail. It goes about 400 something pages in a very tiny letters. And the only criticism by the readers is this book is too detailed. For me, it is incredible. I learned so much. I believe this is one of the books that schools and at least the universities in South Asia must teach to their students. It shows how everything changed in this part of the world. And a funny story, let me share something. When most of the Europeans have a substantial presence in India, they still didn't actually have a good presence in Tamil Nadu, because from the seaside, there are a lot of barriers, and they hit those barriers and they basically break the ships. So they never could sail to Tamil Nadu. So they have to come around from the other side of India. So they never could have such a big presence. Although some Dutch presence was there when the British were trying to go. So British took a risk, even though, contrary to the belief that this sea route must be avoided, don't use this sea route, everyone said, but the British took their risk and sailed there anyway. And these rocks destroyed their ships. So they have about 20-30 sailors, and a lot of them died. Only 4 remained. And they got this safety boat, and they were paddling towards the beach by the safety boat, and the boat capsized. So they had to hold on to the boat, and they started paddling from their legs. And they had this heavy suit, was soaking in water. Now they're about to lose the grip of the boat, so they got rid of the clothes somehow. So the 4 naked Englishmen landed on the beach of Tamil Nadu. That was the beginning of the East India Company in Tamil Nadu. That's how they started their presence. Running around naked in Tamil Nadu, a Dutchman bumped into him and gave them clothes. Eventually, they kicked out all Dutchmen out there and captured Tamil Nadu and captured the entire India and control. This shows what you can do when you have a long-term vision. And there are so many details about it. I don't have time to go through all this. But if you can get hold of his book, if you're so passionate and curious, you will read. Otherwise, you're not going to read it. But I think it's such an incredible treasure if someone can read. Any day, I would trade this with any business degree. Now, this book made such a profound change in my life, like nobody else have. The name of this book is Living with the Himalayan Masters, written by the famous yogi Swami Rama. I got this strange book in a strange time from a strange person in a very strange time. Someone handed this book on my hand, and he said, "This book is for you." And I said, "Okay, fine, thank you very much. It looks good." Took the book, went home. I was in London. The entire thing happened in London. I read the first 10-15 pages and found out it's all about this yogi was brought up in Himalayas. So he was talking about the beauty of Himalayas. I've been to Himalayas, so I didn't want to hear that. And I thought it's boring, and I kept the book on the side of my bed. 2 days later, I was infected by chickenpox. And I was 21 in London. So you might know probably, when you get chickenpox when you're a little kid, you can get away with it easily. But when you get chickenpox when you're an adult, you suffer. And suffer I did. I suffer so much for about a week. Couldn't move anywhere other than the bed. And luckily, the landlord took care of me pretty well. No smartphone back then, just a little TV, and I couldn't even stare at the TV. So finally, I was forced to do nothing but read this book. Ended up reading the book, going past the 20 pages. Man, it was one of the most incredible things that I've read in my entire life. To share such deep things that they've shared, one of the best things happened when you read this book is you become very close with these extreme yogis. You started building such a bond because he shared very normal stories about these yogis. Of course, he goes into the supernatural part in a very, very natural, organic way. He also talks about how some of the people fake these supernatural things and how people misguide people as well, and how to recognize the correct yogis, etc. But the most important thing is he talks about how to liberate yourself from death. He talks about extensively how to die, the process of dying. And he starts by saying this world has mastered the art of preparing a woman to give a birth to a child, right? We have the medical science for that. We have predict the date, give the accurate date, and all sorts of training, all sorts of facilities and preparation, and we know how to bring a new life to this world. However, we don't have a preparation how to exit the world. This book is all about that. So I'll leave it there, and I want you to, if you can get hold of a book and if you decide to read it, man, you're blessed. Lastly, if I talk about the fifth most important book that I ever read, before that I have to tell you something. This book is called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Sold several copies, especially in the Western world, very popular in the mainstream as well as in Asia. And I've read the book. All due respect to this book. There are some really good things that you can read from the book. However, there are two sentences that actually you can summarize the entire book. This Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, he keeps on reminding himself, memento mori, know that you're going to die. And if you are going to die, are you going to do what you're about to do now? Very, very important, intelligent question to ask. And also he talks a lot about acceptance, accepting the world as it is. Brilliant, quite brilliant. However, this book right here was written by Venerable Ajahn Sumedho, a disciple of Ajahn Chah, a very popular enlightened senior, incredible monk who lived in Thailand, forest retreat. He has few disciples. Ajahn Brahm is a very popular monk as well. So Ajahn Sumedho, they have a monastery in England called Amaravati. And this is the volume 1 called Peace is a Simple Step. As I read through this book, I realized I wasted my time reading all the other books. This is so profound, so simple, yet taking you such depth. This is just the volume 1. And there are 4 more volumes that you go deep and deep and deep. I felt like I've been fooled by these Western media and the mainstream. And the best part, you can't buy this. It's not available on Amazon. It's not available anywhere. You can't even purchase this. It's free distributed by Amaravati Monastery only. You got to write to them and get a copy. Right? It's a big book as well. So this is one of the very good learning as well. Don't get carried away with this all mainstream books. This comes with different agendas as well. I've seen how the Western world go raving about Marcus Aurelius because he's a Western emperor, and never give the same credit to Emperor Ashok, who they should have. This book, Ajahn Sumedho, let me just share a few things since you're watching this. One of the things he talks about, something that I always wanted to know. This is for actually the Buddhists who understand a little bit of Buddhism. There's a word called dukkha. Dukkha is a Pali word, and in my country, in Sinhalese, we call it dukkha. We get direct translation as dukkha or the sorrow. It's actually incorrect. I never believed dukkha is dukkha since I was a kid. I was looking for it, the correct term, for so many years. Never found it. Finally, I landed on this book. Dukkha actually means unsatisfied. Unsatisfied. Take a look at this moment right now. You're watching this video, you're probably very satisfied. And a moment later, you need another video. You can have an incredibly amazing dish right now as a breakfast or lunch. 6 hours later, is no more. You need another one. It's called unsatisfied, the nature of unsatisfied. That's what it means, dukkha. And how to deal with it, how to liberate yourself, everything's explained here. And he also talks about 5 hindrances. I actually don't have time to go through in lengthy details. 5 hindrances that stand in the way in the path of enlightenment. One of the things that probably common to all of us, he talks about 5, but one of the things that common to all of us is restlessness. We have this inherent characters. We are so restless. We want to jump from one thing to the other. And worry is one of the hindrances or the obstacles standing in the way, the path of enlightenment, path of liberation. We are living in a time that is so distracted, so busy, and this word restlessness kind of etched into our body right now. And it's your responsibility to actually put a full stop and start meditating and not thinking and not worrying, at least for 10 minutes, 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes as you progress about what you need to jump next. It's one of the hindrances that you have. And he explains more and more beautifully. If you can get a hold of this book, you're so lucky, you're so blessed, and you're going to get liberated yourself. So these are the books that I would say my top books that I ever read. It doesn't mean those are the only books. There are so many books as well. And reading a physical book, ebook, audiobook versus a physical book, reading a physical book makes the biggest impact to anyone, and definitely to me, because your retention is more, because you have this touch and feel. You feel, smell, sense when you are flipping through pages like no other way. So I definitely recommend to get a physical book and read. So I hope this video add great value to you, and hopefully you will at least get hold of 1 or 2 books and start reading. See you again in another video. Until then, live with spirit.